Well, we are back for a second season. It's August 2022. We are just weeks away from opening day, and this is Six Rotations. Couldn't be happier to be alongside this smiling gentleman. He's Mick Haley. I'm Daniel Gilman, and we are so happy with the outpour of support from last year, with everything circling and centralizing with this second season. Mick, you had yourself a very busy offseason. And I know what everyone wants, right? You are here for the live update and reveal of the preseason AVCA top 25 poll. But we're gonna have a little bit of banter first, Mick. Tell us about your offseason. You went over to Europe, you won a championship in Croatia. How's everything been?
Well, it was pretty fun. It was a good trip. It's one of those things. The Global Challenge has become a very unique tournament. Now, 12 American teams, 12 foreign teams go to this tournament. They have competition in under 23 and under 19. And I was lucky enough to coach an all-star team of collegiate players from the United States. My setters were from Nebraska Kearney and Northern Illinois. I had right side players from American and Pepperdine. I had left side hitters from Utah and University of Texas Arlington. It was really fun, and the kids were unbelievably easy to coach. We started off a little sluggish. We couldn't quite get rhythm. Once the setters relaxed, we started to get good, and we just crescendoed through the tournament. The whole concept is good. Corey Solomon, Tim Kelly from Bring It USA really sponsor the thing. Agents are there. They get current film on the players. And the whole idea is to figure out how it would be to play in Europe and to get some opportunities to play in the leagues over there. So we had a good time. We got treated really well. Got a chance to train a local team in Marlborough, which I've been working with for 2 or 3 years. That was really fun. Those kids work really hard. So my wife and I had a great trip. Then we went to Atlanta for a family reunion. And now we hustled back here to get started with both the television and Six Rotations. So, everything's been pretty busy.
We're so happy to be back. It wasn't the only team, for America that represented. Dan Fisher, the Pittsburgh head coach, led the USA U21 Pan America Cup team to a gold medal in Mexico, which essentially qualified them for the 2023 FIVB U21 World Championship, one of 10 teams. So excited to kind of fill you guys all in on all the notes that we've taken, everything that's gone on in the tidbits in the columns here this summer. But this episode is centrally minded. We are going to talk top 25. We are going to give it to you here. I want to just remind you that if you haven't seen the coaches roundtable segment that I did with the 4 Big Ten coaches a couple weeks ago in Chicago, go ahead. You're here on the YouTube. So click subscribe. Go check that out after. I got to talk to the defending champion in Wisconsin with Kelly Sheffield, Dave Shondell, Jen Flynn Oldenburg, and the new head coach for Michigan State in Leah Johnson, who is just a breath of fresh air, as one of the comments said. She's phenomenal to talk with. Unfortunately, only 3 of those teams are on our top 25 here, and we will no longer make you wait. Let's go ahead and unveil it, beginning here with the first little section of these teams, these players. Mick, when you take a look here at it, the big debate, well, it's come to a crescendo. Nebraska sits number 1, Texas is 2, and then you've got Wisconsin, Louisville, and Minnesota to follow. I don't know about you, and I think I do know about you because you're a Texas guy. I'm good. I think Nebraska won, Texas 2. I'm okay with that. I don't know, let's hear it. Everyone's been waiting for mixed response.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. And I think because Texas has so many new players and transfers in that we don't know if they're going to gel or not. But the next 3 are interesting. The coaches placed those 3, Wisconsin, Louisville, and Minnesota, in the top 5. What's your thought about that?
You got to give due to Kelly Sheffield and the fact that they still have Smrek. They get Sarah Franklin coming in, talking about Wisconsin here. Of course, there's going to be a major turnaround. And I do want to say Wisconsin did get 12 first place votes. Texas got 27. Nebraska got 24. So Texas, in the way of the system, got more first place votes. Nebraska finishes 10 points in the total points adjusted ahead of Texas, 99 points ahead of Wisconsin, and then over 220 points ahead of Louisville there. So as we take a look at it, I'm okay with the way some of this has played out. So much turnaround, Mick, and we can kind of jump into it here, starting with, of course, Louisville, where they lose Tori Dilfer, who is the quarterback of that offense. Of course, talking about her dad, Trent, in that with the replacement there with Morningstar or Glock. They get Chaussee back, DeBeer back, but no Stevenson. I think the ACC is up for grabs. We're going to talk a little bit about Georgia Tech. Don't worry, they get respected here as well. Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech, could they have been in that 4 or 5 spot? Probably. But between the three of them, there's so much turnaround. You lose Lund and Ende, and we'll talk about Pittsburgh in a minute. I'm okay with it all. Minnesota is a bit of a wild card. A lot of returning talent, but you lose Samity. I want to hear your thoughts here about 5 before we reveal the next 5. Talk to me about the Golden Gophers.
Well, I went and looked at the roster, and the biggest thing that I see is land for it. If she's 6'5", she can play left or right. If she becomes a Terminator that they can count on, then I think Minnesota's in the hunt. But she's not proved that she can play a full season and do this. So I think the coaches are giving Minnesota a lot of credit here.
A lot of credit.
I there are several teams I could put into that spot. You mentioned Pitt, you mentioned Georgia Tech, but I think Washington deserves a look.
You know what? I think we're back on our chemistry grind here, Mick. You know, we haven't talked to each other on camera in months. Our last chat was after that incredible national championship between Nebraska and Wisconsin. They are going to rematch in late October. Next week, we're going to talk about the first weekend schedule, some of the big non-conference battles that we're looking forward to, and maybe a couple other fun facts. This one is all about the top 25. And with that, let's take a look at 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Ohio State, that was going to be the team that I mentioned. You might flip them with Minnesota because they are the media's darling. You roll into the first ever Big Ten media days, and the team that blew me away most in the press conferences, Kylie Murr, Mac Pedraza, wearing the white blazers. If you haven't seen our tweets talking about them, the Jennifer Lopez look, and then they've got Jay Foe leading the way with Jen Flynn Oldenburg. Yeah, you know, if you talk about teams in the Big Ten that lose the least, you have to point at Ohio State because you get the All-American in Pedraza back, Riley Rader, a second-team All-American, Emily Londot, an honorable mention All-American. They're going to start off the season with a pair against Texas, and sign me up. Just put me back into this recliner. I just moved into a new apartment, so there's no backdrop yet. We're working our way through the kinks, but we needed to give you, the close-up look at the new recliner chair that I'm going to be watching thousands and thousands of hours of volleyball this season, Mick. But when you look at this, Washington, Georgia Tech, BYU, does that kind of file in the right order, at least to you?
Well, I'm not as high on Ohio State as you are, and I thought they kind of ran out of gas by the end of the season last year. I looked to see what they've added, and I don't see that they've added anybody that can pick them up. So you're right. They started fast the last 2 years. They've been fun to watch, but at the end, they've had trouble. So I wonder about Ohio State. I think BYU is huge. Have you seen the size of the kids on their roster?
Oh, you mean literally? They are. They certainly are. They do have to replace Kenzie Korber, Kennedy Eschenberg, Taylon Ballard-Nixon, Reiner, Hefo. They bring back Whitney Bauer. I don't know. I don't know if they're a top 10 team to me right now. I'll let everyone kind of see the next couple before making that decision. But as we look at this top 10, Mick, we didn't give enough attention, I think, here in the beginning to Pitt. I want to remind folks, replacing Lund, Ende, Member Monet, they get Serena Gray back. Vasquez Gomez comes back as well. A big name that they added in the offseason, though, Courtney Bezerio for Iowa. She's a bit of a wild card down there. Of course, Wakolo is back, and then they added A&M's Cameron Ennis out there. Pitt at 6 is interesting. Georgia Tech at 9, maybe a little disrespectful.
I think
they lose
Bergman,
McKissick and Brambilla.
I think Bergman alone the way she played this summer, I think Georgia Tech needs to be up there higher. I don't know if the coaches followed what Bergman did, but she was unbelievable this summer.
Yeah. First team All-American in last season as well.
Yeah. And so I think if she brings her game, Georgia Tech might be the best in the ACC.
Oh, all right. So we'll bulletin board that one. Give it to all the other ACC coaches for you. But before we move on from the top 10, I want to give enough due, because no matter how many minutes we spend talking about Nebraska and Texas, there will be comments and there will be tweets about people stating that we didn't spend enough. So let's go ahead and lay it out for all of them. This is who Nebraska is adding and who they need to replace. So you've got Nicklin Hames back, an All-American. You're adding maybe the best middle blocker in the nation in Caitlin Horde, of second-team All-American from Penn State. You've got Maddie Kubik. You've got Little Kubik. Alec as well, of an All-American high school talent. Lexi Rodriguez, the defensive player of the year. Kenzie Knuckles, who has moved to defensive specialist. And you're replacing Lexi's son, Lauren Stivrins, and a very, very topical conversation in Kayla Caffey, as well as Callie Schwarzenbach. So let's talk specifically about Big Red here. That's my best team in the nation right here off of the paper. Talking to John Cook in Chicago at the Big Ten Media Days, he feels a little looser this season. I think getting to a championship, Mick, and you would know this better than anyone, when you come back from a championship win compared to a championship loss, do you feel like it loosens you a bit when you get so far and you finish second?
Well, I think Cook's got several problems. He's got to find a leader in that group. Kubik is the one that comes to mind. But there is a rumor on the street that Haynes will not set next year. That
you mean this season?
That the freshman setter is coming in this fall. The redshirt freshman will be the starting setter. So now you've got issues with timing and all of that. Have you heard anything about Haynes? Is she setting, or is she becoming a defensive player?
I can tell you that we love the rumors here. Mick is a little bit more on board on the rumor bus than me. I am waiting for match number 1. I think they've got like Corpus Christi to start, but it's going to be a good little tournament in Lincoln with Tulsa and Pepperdine as well. I'm a Nicklin Hames support. I think Nicklin Hames will be the setter. I think she's the vocal leader. I'm not so sure, if they're going to go with the 2 setters, right? Because Kennedy Orr is a stud. She is that 5-star that they recruited. Bree Orr, who is the Iowa setter and a standout, her little sister. And of course, the year of growing, the Aaron Rodgers kind of thing where Kennedy sat and watched. Trust me, I would not be surprised at all if 2 setters work their way into the team.
Well, you did a great job in Chicago, but I thought there would have been rumors up there. Nebraska is not going to play a 6-2. The rumor I got that Kennedy Orr will start.
Okay.
Haynes has agreed to play defense. I find that hard to believe. But that's the rumor.
Well,
everybody needs to watch and see if that's true.
Here's all the talk. The talk in Chicago was all about Kayla Caffey. Kayla Caffey, who is set to play this season as whatever it was, a 5th or 6th year, graduated in December. And because she graduated in December, this is the answer to all of the questions of what's going on and why wasn't she scholarship on the board. We'll answer this quickly and we'll move on. Because Caffey graduated in December, Hames and Schwarzenbach both graduated in May. So in that time period between December and May, Caffey's scholarship went to one of the 2 freshmen because they had 2 available. One of them taken from Riley Gray, who retired medically. They needed a second scholarship. That went. The discussion from John Cook's side was that he was going to use NIL money or something like that, and Caffey disagrees, and that's what all of the talk in Chicago was about. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in Lincoln opening weekend, but way more curious, Mick. Like, I am going to be very clear about this. I care way more about Columbus. I want to know how Caffey's going to fit in your burnt orange and how everything is going to line up with Maddie Skinner adding along as a Longhorn. Of course, we've got the big addition of Zoe Fleck down there as well. You lose Brianne Butler. Skylar Fields goes to USC. Nalani Yosia, a friend of the show, goes to Michigan State, and now it's the Eggleston O'Neill Phillips company with all the newcomers. What are you thinking here with, what is it? Ewert gets added, the all-conference setter from Colorado, Bergmark, and Akana from Nebraska as well. It's a fantasy team down there in Austin.
Well, and not only that, they've changed their coaching staff. The addition of David Hunt from Pepperdine men's program, and his wife Jordan Larson, who moved from assistant coach to volunteer coach. That's still a head scratcher. That is a pretty strong staff now. Still to be seen who's going to coach the setters, but yes, they have an all-star team. It's going to take them some time to put this together. They could start fast, but where they might have trouble is in the middle. And you didn't mention Para, the
Right.
young lady from Mexico, but where is she going to play? That's another one.
So let's move it on. There's a lot of teams that want to know where they're sitting. We're going to take a look at maybe the most controversial set of 5 here. And here's 11 to 15. And I really like Kentucky. We talked to Emma Grome last season. They're now sophomore setter. You got to keep an eye on the Wildcats. I think maybe the least talked about contender because of the addition of Adana Rollins, one of my favorite players in the entire Big Ten the last few seasons out of Minnesota. And then she bounced around a little bit, Penn State. They lose Maddie Skinner. You move down that list. UCLA has gotten a lot of buzz about them this offseason for a team that loses their stalwart in Mac May. Additions of Maddie McKissick, Lauren Forte from the University of Florida. And then you've got a team that's replacing everybody in Purdue. There is not one player who had significant impact to a team that I've been covering, for 3 of the last 4 years. It's going to be all fresh turnover for Dave Shondell. Stanford 14, Florida 15. This is a friendly little group here of teams that we know a lot about, it feels like.
Yeah, I think one of the things that shocks me is Stanford's talent. I would have thought the coaches would have had them higher. They are loaded with talent. Forte, you were talking about Forte. This is her 3rd team. She started at Cal, went to Florida, and now is at her 3rd university. That's an interesting one. I think this is an unknown group.
I couldn't agree more.
I could shake the dice on this and probably live with wherever they fell.
And I love the additions that the University of Florida made. Of course, Tiara Caesar had that late surprise retirement. Dooley, Forte, Thayer Hall also, leaves. They lose Montserrat. Merritt Beeson comes back. Bree Kelly as well. They've got McKissick as well, Ellie McKissick, the sister of Maddie McKissick. And they add AC Fitzpatrick, Annie Kate, from Penn State, someone that I have just enjoyed every minute of watching in the short time she's been able to shine out in State College. So I may be biased, as a 2017 University of Florida graduate, but you never can doubt those two Purdue ties and Dave Shondell and Mary Wise and that little grouping as 2 coaches that will certainly always make heads turn. But as we move into the 16 through 20, this is where I have a little bit of issues with the teams in this 5 and then the next 5, and we'll kind of pair them together a bit. Baylor's, I don't want to be bulletin material, but let me just list who they're losing, right? Yassiana Presley, Sedgwick, Vandermark, Skinner. 11 total Bears are leaving the sideline of Ryan down there in Waco. I'm not sure that they're a top 20 team. Illinois behind him has a lot to prove. Creighton is a team that is consistent and deserves it. And then Penn State at 20. These are 3 teams I'm not sure I expected to be on the top 25 at all.
Yeah, I would agree with you about Baylor. I think they're totally untested. I think Illinois hasn't been a finisher, so you have to worry about them. But Creighton had an injury at the end of the year. I believe they're probably a little underranked. I think they characteristically fall in this category at the start of the year. The coaches seem to put them there. They seem to put BYU where they are. They seem to put San Diego where they are. It's kind of like, where do we put them kind of thing. And I think Penn State's too high at 20. Like you said, they've lost some pretty good talent. and they're starting with a new coach, so they're going to have to work their way up. So I agree with you. Oregon is the team that we don't know about. So I think they're a team to watch. They kind of play in the middle of the pack here, but never really seem to come forward. So the coaches have given them a lot of credit, and I'm not sure why or why not. But you've got Washington, Stanford in that conference, and then Oregon is the third team that's ranked. That's 20 teams and only 3 from the Pac-10.
Well, let's see. Let me walk you. Let's walk you back. Let's talk about some of these returners on these teams. Creighton, we talked to Jayla Zimmerman last season, All-American, along with Nora Sis, who is certainly a Freshman of the Year contender. You've got Waite, another All-American back. They do lose Hickman and the libero Abby Bottomley, but a ton of talent in a conference that's not necessarily loaded. I do like Creighton as a Big East winner this season. Then you talk about Illinois. They really only lose Megan Cooney. So a lot of fresh talent coming in. And, Chris Thomas is one of the best coaches in the nation as well. So you certainly have to keep an eye on that. For Penn State, this is a team that just sniped Purdue's, borderline All-American middle in Taylor Trammell. And it's a spot where new coaching staff, no Russ Rose. I'm not so sure that you want to put a lot of expectations on a team that loses Horde, Parker, Rollins, Blossom, Hampton, Pritchard, and they add Elisaya from Bakersfield, a very agile setter. We'll see if she contends. Another Big West add in Long Beach State for Keyshauna Williams, who has a lot of talent. You could sell me both ways on Penn State. I just would rather see them start a little bit lower and prove people wrong, if you kind of know where I'm coming from there.
Well, I think so. And I think it's just the history of Penn State that gets them in this position. At this point now, the coaches have put them in a little bit of a situation where the new coach is going to feel a little heat. So I think we're going to see some movement there. I don't know which way, but I would watch Penn State closely.
So another team you mentioned in that conversation, and it's in that entire Pac-12 talk before we reveal the last few teams. I do want to talk a little bit more about the Pac-12. We didn't really touch too much on all that Washington is bringing back, but Oregon gets Brooke Nuneviller back, an All-American. Mutiri comes back as well. You lose Borup and Hansen. You wonder what Georgia Murphy's going to bring to the table as well. I don't know about you. I think this is going to be a Washington and Stanford conference. Ella May Powell, Claire Hoffman, Crenshaw is back as well. There's a ton of talent for Keegan Cook out in the Northwest. They lose Dreschel and Sanders and Callie, but the Stanford situation, Baird, Kipp, Minor, Francis, Ogilvy, you add Rugen, who's supposed to be a top prospect, and you lose Holly Campbell, and that's it. And is this the year? I'll ask you that. Is this the year that Stanford gets back in that groove that they were in?
I think this is an upgrade. I agree. I think Stanford comes back here.
All right, here it is. The final few. And these are the teams that I feel got a little disrespected, maybe just kind of thrown in there by coaches who don't spend too much attention watching. Western Kentucky. How many times are we going to start a season, Nick, without giving the due to the team in Bowling Green? They get the superstar Matthews back. She's back. And you're going to put them in 21 when they just nearly shocked the nation last season and went on a crazy run 2 years ago. Explain this one to me. Explain Western Kentucky at 21 to me.
Yeah, they've been there. Western Kentucky's been in the tournament. They've been close. They're got experience. They've been tested. Now they're going to try to win. I'm sure the coaching staff, the players, this is all about how they finish this year. And I think you need to give them their due. I'd put them up there. The problem will be their schedule. And, if he's able to scheduled some teams that are ranked highly so he can show that they are back, then he's okay. If he doesn't, then I think he's going to flounder back here until the tournament starts. I don't want to play him in the tournament.
I wouldn't want to play them, period. And I'm a big Travis Hudson fan. A good friend of mine, and Jessica Lucas is the assistant coach there. it's just one of those teams that anytime you watch them, you get blown away. We could talk about the teams in this area, right? You got Kansas, USC barely clinging on, San Diego as well. I'd like to talk a little bit here at the end about the snubs. Washington State is the 26th team. The University of Miami, Tennessee, and Michigan follow them. Then you've got teams that are just straight up left off of most people's ballots altogether. How about the 2-loss Michigan State Bulldogs that have, no one's talking about? Pepperdine is not receiving that much attention, and UCF as well there at the bottom of the receiving votes I'm looking at. There's a couple teams here at the bottom, and we could talk about Kansas. They have to replace a lot. The Big 12 has a lot to back up after here, Mick, considering they had 7 teams in the tournament last year. What do you think about Kansas? What do you think about like Texas Tech and West Virginia and that hodgepodge of teams that all made it to the tournament?
Well, I would go back and say roster-wise, talent-wise, Western Kentucky's experienced. You got them right. I think SC's talent this year, they should be a close third. I was talking about Pac-12 teams. I think they ought to move up in the conference and really challenge. You've got UCLA, you've got SC, you've got Washington, you've got Stanford. And then we talked about Oregon. We've got Utah in the mix here, but they lost their very best player. In fact, they've lost 2 dynamic scorers the last 2 years. Korver going to BYU was a big hurt. They still hung in there, but they have Maddie Robinson coming back. She was the MVP of this global challenge.
Oh, that's good.
She's a 5'10" left side hitter, 5'11" left side hitter with dynamic power. And I believe she could carry Utah a little bit, but she's the only one that I can put a star beside to bring Utah back. And Kansas, we expect Ray Bouchard's teams to come on here. He's been down for a year, so I think they might come up. But you're right. There are some experienced teams like Central Florida, for instance, that have proved themselves year in and year out that they're taking on teams and beating them. I think they got Florida 2 years ago and beat them. Last year they beat a bunch of good teams. We're in the tournament and we're very competitive. So yeah, I think there could be some other teams in this last 5.
Yeah, UCF had that tough 5-set loss last year, but McKenna Melville is back along with their setter in Amber Olson. They have to replace Watson and Westlich. Let's talk a little bit, though, about that Big 12 and maybe the turnaround that some teams have. Kansas has to replace Jenny Mosser. We had her on the show. She was great in their fantastic first weekend of the tournament. And the I don't want to call it a miracle run. It was just a very successful, couple matches in a row for the Jayhawks. Caroline Crawford goes to Wisconsin. They do have BN, the All-American, back. Langs returns as well. And then talking a little bit about maybe an Iowa State team. They've got to replace their libero of the year in Popovich. First teamer and Herrera's gone. They've got a lot of talent losing. Kansas State gets Haley Warner Carter back, but has to replace Bond and Smith. And I know I'm talking a language that some Big Ten and SEC fans may not connect to, but hopefully there's a good amount of you Big 12 people out there that I'm connecting with here. And then lastly, here at the bottom, USC. Let's talk about them, and we'll kind of wrap our show a bit with USC and maybe 1 or 2 picks that you think here in the 20s, at least. I'd like to hear one team in the 20s or in the receiving votes category that we've got our eyes on. We're going to have some cool segments for you this season. I can't wait to debut all this in a couple weeks. Best of the West. We're going to have a couple rising and lowering stocks for teams. We're going to have a referee segment every once in a while where we talk about some of the big calls that may be missed or maybe covered well, and no one likes to talk about that. But with USC, Skylar Fields instantly propels them to another level, in my opinion. All-American from Texas. But another laundry list of players that leave, right? Brooke Botkin, the All-American, Denny, Scully, Lazaro, Paige Hammonds. You get Tua Niga back, Wesky as well. You got to really sell me on UCLA and USC. Let's just put it that way.
Well, USC can now score on the left side with Fields, and Botkin was good. And I think if the setter had been 1 year older, that might have worked out better for them last year. It's really interesting on who they're going to put in the middle. And if they can score with Vesky on the right side, the setter is really good, and this is her second year, so I think they'll be comfortable with her. She has a great jump serve to go with her setting and her physicalness. So who's in the middle for SC? That's really the question, and can they score?
All right, well, there we go. We've got our pick of teams. Now give me a team from 20 to 35. I mentioned some of those teams receiving votes that we really want to keep our eyes on. I mentioned Western Kentucky, but that's a bit of a gimme. They're not going to play somewhat of a tough conference schedule, so you could pretty much pencil them in for the tournament. What's one other team here in the bottom that you want to give a little bit of attention here at the end of the episode?
Well, I keep hearing little bits about Colorado State.
Ooh, okay.
They have been characteristically good over the years. I've been a little down the last year or two, but they have lost some players in the recruiting at the last minute that would have made them good again. And Tom Hilbert's the head coach there. He has taken his team overseas again on a trip. Usually every time he does this, he comes back. He is really good. So I would keep an eye on Colorado State. That's one I would throw to you.
All right. Well, I'm gonna throw one more out there, and a team that may not get a lot of love, and you mentioned them a little bit, and that's San Diego. San Diego swept by Rice in the first round of the tournament last season, but they've got a couple big names coming back: Annie Benbow, Layla Blackwell, Grace Froling, all returning for the Toreros, and they start their season against Pitt, August 26th, the first Friday, a noon Pacific time start out in Texas. They'll also face Hawaii. Then the next weekend at Louisville against Ohio State. So right off the bat, a chance for USD to maybe make a name out of themselves. Let's throw them into that mix there. And Mick, we are so happy to be back into the swing of things with all of our fans. Feel free and please comment, email, tweet at us, questions, comments, any feedback that you want to hit us with. We're going to continue to roll along with all the adjustments that you guys feel we may need to make. Or sometimes it's fun to hear a little bit of hate mail for Mick and I to get fueled the same way the players do. But that's going to be it. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so happy to be a part of this top 25 preseason AVCA poll reveal. And until next week, he's Mick Haley. I'm Daniel Gilman, and this is Six Rotations.